Adam Parkhomenko, welcome back to Mea Culpa. Great to see you, my friend. So much going on. I don't even know where to start, but got to start somewhere, so I'm going to just jump right into it. Adam, question for you. Why did Democrats fail to get on cable news and social media fast enough during the government shutdown, while literally Republicans dominated the narrative within minutes?
I don't know. It's a great question. It's the premise and hypothesis that was Midas touch to begin with, right? It was something that we needed, and it seems to be one of the only sort of networks out there that continues to do what we need to do and fight the way we need to fight. I mean, how many, not just, months and weeks and years are we going to talk about this, but it's literally been years and years. And, I think it is a problem from the top down. I think we have, and I've said this before, I think we have a New York leader problem, both in New York and in DC. Both of our leaders just don't seem to get it. I will say the one thing that I appreciate was that they held as much as the caucus as they could together to actually force this shutdown, because I believe the shutdown needed to happen. But we can't do this thing where it's like reaching out to people at 9 p.m. at night saying, hey, we're doing this event at 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Can you get 30 people out to come to this event and be part of this press conference?
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm incredibly critical of Ken Martin, the new DNC chair, other than getting from him and from the DNC a text message or an email every single day, multiple times a day, asking for $5, $10, $25, always with the same sort of thing. Oh my God, have you seen what the Republicans are saying? Now is the time we need you to chip in. How about Ken? How about this? Why don't you go fuck yourself in Macy's window? You and your stupid requests for money. When I finally realize what you're going to do, and I agree with what you're going to do with the money, maybe then I'll support the DNC. In the meantime, I feel that people like you and me, Midas Touch Network, the Mycellus brothers, Don Lemon, Joe Walsh, Lev Parnas, Malcolm Nance, and a slew of other people that I work with on a daily basis, I feel as if though we're doing what they should be doing. And that's getting the message out to individuals so that they understand we are sitting on a precipice right now, that if we are not successful in this midterm election, then we are going to end up losing our democratic republic. But that doesn't seem to push him. I think Hakeem Jeffries, while he's a decent man, I think he's an ineffective speaker. When I hear all of these pundits talking about how, he's going to the podium and he's making the argument, fuck that. I mean, I don't hear the outrage. I don't hear the New York speech that I think the entire country, and then Chuck Schumer just seems like it's like a Weekend at Bernie's. It's almost like a puppet, with his fake outrage and his performative art. Not into it.
Yeah, I mean, a couple of things. One, on the Hakeem piece, I almost kind of counter to conventional wisdom. Oddly, I feel like he speaks really effectively, but he's not saying and doing the right things, right? So, when it comes time to doing a floor speech or, speaking for, certain critical things that we need to get through Congress, I think he is compelling and effective, but I don't think that the message is compelling. I don't think that the words are compelling. Look, I don't even know what we're doing in the Senate in terms of Chuck Schumer. I think Ken Martin has been a friend of mine for 20 years. He knows how to win. He's from Minnesota. He's not your typical DC guy. But one of the problems that we have, right, when we don't have the White House, in addition to a lot of problems that we have when we have the White House that we can't do moving forward, is that no one's really in charge, right? Because when Bill Clinton gets elected president, there are no DNC elections. You appoint who the head of the DNC is. Same thing on the House and Senate side. What I can't figure out is we have some incredible people that we all believe are true fighters and are saying what needs to be said, what needs to happen, and they know how to play this game like Republicans. We can hold our elections at any time. We're so worried about a Dems in disarray when technically we are in array when it comes to voting right now, -1 on the House and 3 on the Senate side, that, look, just as an example, if you like AOC can step up at any time and run to be leader, right? So I do think there's that part too. There's the people that are fighting the good fight out there and saying what needs to be said, and they're taking it to Republicans, and they're the Gavin Newsoms of the world down outside of Congress. They're doing the right type of trolling and fighting back. But at the same time, people can step up and run for leader at any time. And what's going to happen? We're going to get another bad hit on CNN. We're already getting 100 a day.
Yeah, 100 a day is a small number. Let me ask you this. So with all that being said and done, what's the real damage to public perception when Democrats allow the GOP to frame them as the cause of this government shutdown? I don't know why. And it's a very simple message to put out there. Every single Democrat, from the second that the government was going to shut down, and they knew it was shutting down about 48 hours in advance, how about come out and say, I want to make one thing and only one thing clear. The Oval Office is controlled by a Republican. The Senate is controlled by the Republicans. The House of Representatives, oh yeah, they're controlled by Republicans too. This is a Republican government, and this government shut down.
The judiciary.
Right. And this is a Republican government, and this government shutdown is to be owned by the Republican Party, plain and simple. But they didn't do that.
Yeah, and first of all, I think you're being generous to Democrats with 48 hours. I think we saw this coming long before that, right? And
yeah.
and we've got clips from 2011, 2013 of Donald Trump saying, if there's a shutdown, it's a leadership failure on the part of the president. He said it multiple times in multiple interviews. You and Ben Meiselas and others have done a great job getting those clips out there. I watched Ben interview Hakeem yesterday, and I thought the idea that Ben presented was a good one. If you guys are going to go there to the White House and ultimately be humiliated one way or another, why not call this fucking guy's bluff? Ask him to come down to you, or do it there and do it open to the media the entire time, because Donald Trump is his own worst enemy. He will speak for 2 hours, and the American people will truly understand that this, in fact, is a Republican shutdown. And it gives us the opportunity to just knock back and hit hard back on these bullshit talking points that are almost becoming a truth. They've been spoken so much about illegal aliens and others.
Yeah. By the way, I'm with you 100%, because when Ben said that, I was like, yeah, what a great idea. How about have every one of the Democratic House of Representatives, let's start with the House, and show up onto the lawn of the White House. Get the authorization that you need. Everybody show up and ask the president to come outside and in front of the press do what the American people need. Let's figure this out in front of the American people right now.
And by the way, you and I have been saying this for years, because we said we said this the last time, Donald Trump's president, Democrats should hold a daily press conference outside the White House. It will be covered. May not be everybody, but it'll be covered. Have a new speaker. Have Michael Cohen at a podium outside the White House. You think the press is not going to show up?
Yeah, you could bet your bottom dollar that they would show up. On top of that, even assuming that Fox chooses not to run it, they're not going to give me the time. That's okay.
I'll say one thing.
I
wouldn't be surprised if they didn't, because oddly, one of the most normal questions the other day was a guy that I can't stand, who shouldn't even be called a reporter. You got Ducey in the White House who's saying, doesn't this seem like you guys are trying to withhold funding because of these two leaders from New York, the 2.1 or $1.8 billion? Like, don't these go hand in hand? Will you guys just admit? And again, I can't stand the guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if he showed up, because he's just so full of himself, to cover you. I think OAN, I think they all would.
So just imagine if they did, it would finally be the ability to get in front of not just MAGA, but also these just slight of right center individuals who are so brainwashed by the lies that come out. I watch like Jesse Waters as this jerk off just spews more and more lies, or Gutfeld. And I mean, it's really just a propaganda network. If we could get in front, but even assuming that we couldn't, between Midas, between Lincoln Project, Seneca Project, between you, between so many others, just put it out there. I would let Midas live feed it, to everybody. I promise you. Then we start cutting it and putting it on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. Just put it out everywhere. But I'm with you. Every single day, there should be somebody new sitting in front of the White House at the same exact podium at the same exact time, and a 15-minute episode. 15 minutes, just hard-hitting, knock it out of the park, telling the truth where America's at right now. That's a strategy that if you're friends with Ken Martin, why don't you tell him to wake the fuck up already? Adam, we are tired. We are beaten down and exhausted. And getting up every day and putting on our big boy pants and, start writing for Substacks and doing our podcast, it is getting exhausting when you are doing it. And the party that you're doing it for appears to be fighting you.
What's interesting too. Well, first of all, just throw out there again, the Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein statue is back up outside the Capitol. That would be a perfect backdrop to do a press conference today. With the shutdown, it's making it more difficult for them to pick it up and take it away each time. But with that said, to a point that you just made, given how fast independent media like you, Midas, and others are growing, it's also possible at some point that this is going to be an issue that resolves itself, because we see the numbers come out. YouTube is where people are getting their news. It's only a matter of time until a certain demographic and group of people are able to figure out how to get YouTube on their TV, and that'll be the end of it. I mean, that'll be the end of cable news. Cable news and legacy media is already dying. So I only say the one sort of ounce of hope that I have is the fact that these channels that we're talking about continue to grow by leaps and bounds, get so many new viewers, and survey after survey that we're seeing that comes out, just the number of people moving over to watch on a channel like this is you can't discount. And I think that's why we're starting to see even CNN and others start to bring on people like Adam Mockler, right? Because they understand that Adam Mockler is somebody that people are listening to, somebody who's going to take that clip and he's going to put it on his channels, and it's going to get more views. That one hit is going to get more views than everybody that tuned into that show.
Yeah, agree with you. So let me ask you this. Could this media lag influence key swing voters in the midterms? And how much long-term trust do you think has been lost?
Look, it's a good question. Right now, Donald Trump, has a 38% problem. But as we've seen, it's this weird pendulum that's always going back and forth. And, something could happen 2 weeks from now where all of a sudden the guy's negatives, are dropping and he's got better numbers than he's ever had before. It's a very weird thing. It's a guy that seems to catch lightning in the bottle 3 times a day when it comes to winning these fucking lawsuits and not going to prison and so forth. So I think that 38% number right now is important. What it means is that there's 38% we're just never going to get through. And election after election, Democrats spend so much money trying to reach out to these people and get through to these people, and it's never going to happen. But there are people who are open-minded and they view both parties as liars. And we need to do exactly what the premise of your original question was, and hammer home that this is the Trump shutdown. This is why it is, but not wait until the last minute to do it. I mean, this is just another case study of how to approach things differently in the future. Not that we needed another one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I want to just switch to a different topic for a second. And I want to talk about James Comey. Now, off record, you and I have spoken many, many times, and you know that I have a complete and total disdain for Jim Comey. But given his indictment, question I really want to ask you is, why do both Democrats and Republicans still to this day distrust him?
Well, a number, look, there's a lot of, if you go on Twitter, where what a third of it is probably like automated bots and all that kind of stuff, and you try to sift through it, they'll tell you that, oh, Democrats blamed Comey for the election, but they also said it's Russia. Like it can't be a number of things, right? In elections, the people that suggest that somebody went into a voting booth or a machine and changed votes, that is bullshit. It never happened. But what did change votes is the perception of voters. So if there was disinformation being pushed online that Hillary, this happened at the time, was tied to the Muslim Brotherhood because of Huma Abedin, who was her right-hand assistant and senior aide, that disinformation could persuade a voter to vote a different way when they go into the ballot box. With James Comey, he did something that was basically unheard of when he came out and made her sound guilty even though they weren't doing anything. And that whether it's the diehard grassroots Democrats or the perception that could have had in some of these very slim margins throughout the country to this day. But again, I'm one of the people when this bullshit indictment came down, I said, only these guys could make me have his back. And what his son-in-law did, resigning, was very at the U.S. Attorney's Office, was very admirable. But that also made me think, sometimes you just wish these good people would stay where they are because we need them right now more than ever. But look, again, going back to 2013 when he was when Comey was appointed, he was a Republican, lifelong Republican, and he was appointed by Barack Obama. And these, every so often it comes up for an FBI director to be appointed. You're not supposed to have them come and go the way that Donald Trump is. You're not supposed to fire them the way that Donald Trump did. And to me, the Comey thing was even weirder because I actually thought, if anything, Donald Trump owed Comey a big thank you.
Yeah. Well, look, I said on MSNBC, and I stand by it, as somebody who has gone through the weaponization of the Justice Department, as someone who was the litmus test for the weaponization of the Justice Department, who saw prosecution as the first political prisoner ever held by this country because I refused to waive my First Amendment constitutional right.
And Michael, you should remind all your new viewers. I mean, they literally made something up about you.
Yeah. I mean, they produced a document that just doesn't exist, wanted me to sign it when I said it's violative of my First Amendment. They had the marshals waiting for me and took me back into custody and put me back into solitary confinement. But forgetting about me for a second here, because this is about Comey, I truly believe that Comey likely committed a crime. What that crime was, whether that crime, like what they did to me, is one that would necessitate prosecution, maybe not. But I also do believe that Comey, very much like what they did to me, can fight this DOJ. I don't care how strong you think you are. He could stand up there at his 6'6" or whatever, 6'7", however tall he is. He could stand up and say, I'm not afraid, I'm not scared. Bullshit. When he gets home, he's cowering in his wife's arms. He's crying like a bitch because Comey, like everybody else that goes up against this DOJ, ultimately gets beaten down. You're never stronger than the government, and you're never more powerful than the president, especially not one that's willing to violate the law in order to get the conviction. So I do believe Comey is fucked.
Yeah, I agree with you. And on that note, 2 or 3 things come to mind. Number one, if he's guilty of something, right, and these are crimes that we're supposed to prosecute, he should be held to the same standard that anyone else is, right? But this DOJ and this president are getting stronger and more dangerous every single day. That's another reason why I agree with you that it's fucked. But when you put what they're claiming he did next to Kash Patel, who sat there in the Senate, responded to Senator Kennedy asking if anybody else was involved in the trafficking of women and girls with Jeffrey Epstein, I don't know that I've ever seen anyone perjure themselves more than Kash Patel during those 2 days of hearings between the Senate and the House. Same thing right now with the shutdown. Go to just about any government website. The VA sent an email to its members blaming the Democrats. That is a violation of the Hatch Act. Okay, they will go after people for the Hatch Act, while the government and those employed from Donald Trump down are violating the Hatch Act every single day, and nothing will happen to those folks. And somebody who makes one minor mistake will be the new James Comey.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. When I was in prison, I read this book called 5 Felonies a Day. And I want each and every one of you who are listening or watching this podcast with my dear friend here, Adam Parkhomenko, I want you to turn around and say, you think that there's something in your life that if in fact government knew about it, that they could potentially indict you on? Because this book, which was written by Harvey Westgate, called 5 Felonies a Day, everyone commits like 5 felonies a day. So you turn around and understand, Trump knows what he's doing here. He knows that everybody is guilty of something. There's something with everybody. I mean, look at what he did, for example, with Tish James, claiming mortgage fraud. He did the same thing to who? Adam Schiff. He turned around and he realized there's got to be something with Fani Willis. And after slowly digging in, what did they realize? She's having sexual relations with the lead prosecutor that she brought on, tainted the entire case, tainted it to the point that they had to drop the goddamn case. And he knows that this every single person.
To your point about 5 felonies a day and Tish James, what happened after they didn't find anything with Tish James? Well, the felony was on the other side, right? Because Trump forced out a prosecutor for not violating the law.
Yeah,
the head of the Eastern District of Virginia.
Yeah, well, now he's got somebody else in there, Lindsay Halligan, who's willing to do his bidding.
Miss Teen and insurance.
You know what? People say that all the time, that she was a former Miss USA, pageant contestant and so on. That doesn't negate her intelligence, nor does it turn around and say
but
that she's not capable.
But I think the two things that do are, one, the fact that she's willing to do something that a career prosecutor said that they couldn't indict on, and the other is that the lack of prosecution. I mean, she just. We'll see what happens. I will say,
Adam, I think you mean the lack of prosecutorial experience.
Excuse me. Yeah.
Look, between the government shutdown, Congress playing hot potato with crises, and the media losing its mind daily, life feels like a full-time national emergency. And yet, somehow, I used to come home and collapse onto my old mattress like it was some medieval punishment or what I had in solitary confinement. But then I tried Lisa. And let me tell you, my Lisa hybrid mattress, it's an absolute game changer. I lay down and it's like the chaos just, it pauses. Plush where it should be, supportive where it counts. My back, my shoulders, even my poor stressed out brain, it all finally relaxes. I sleep harder and deeper than I have in years. And trust me, I have some wild nights, and I'm not even talking about politics here. But yet the best part, Lisa isn't just about me getting my beauty rest. They donate mattresses to people in need, and they help clean up our oceans. So while I'm sleeping like a baby, someone else is getting a shot at comfort too. So here's the deal. Go right now to lisa.com and use promo code Cohen. You'll get 20% off your mattress plus an extra $50 off, exclusive for my listeners only. So that's Lisa, LEESA.com, promo code Cohen, COHEN. Support our show, get a mattress that actually works, and finally, and I mean finally, sleep like a sane person.
I will say, honestly, it was interesting to me that they got that indictment through, just because obviously different jury and different side, but what we've been seeing in DC is that these grand juries have not been coming back with these indictments they've been trying to push through, including with, they used to say that a grand jury could indict a ham sandwich, but they couldn't indict the guy that threw a ham sandwich from Subway, right? And so things have changed a little bit, because you have a jury in this area that's made up of individuals who have siblings that are in law enforcement, cousins who have been in the prison system. They're involved, and they look at things not through any one lens, but a lens that they think is fair and true.
Yeah. I do have to say that Lindsay Halligan will most probably not be prosecuting this case. It will be a career prosecutor from the Eastern District of Virginia's office. No different than Tish James didn't prosecute the civil case against Donald Trump. Alvin Bragg didn't prosecute the criminal case against Donald Trump.
But what do you make of someone like Haba, right? I mean, he does bring people along that ultimately you would think that they're not going to do something, and then all of a sudden they're doing it. I think because he perceives it as like part of the show, right? Like they look like they're central casting and they're a character, and maybe that'll be to his benefit. So, I mean, I think you're right, but I wouldn't be shocked if, ultimately they did go that route.
Yeah, I still believe that it's not going to be Lindsay Halligan prosecuting this case. It'll be a career prosecutor. And I do truly believe that even if they don't find that the indictable that the charges that Comey was indicted on are the ones, they'll just hit him with a superseding indictment on something else. Because as I said before, going back to the book, 5 Felonies a Day, every single person has done something that government can come down hard on you. And that's exactly what Donald Trump knows. He knows that every single person is guilty of this, and he's going to exploit it.
And to that point, this is the first of many, right?
Yep.
We're going to see it happen with Bolton, and we're going to, probably a bunch of other people that are very familiar to others.
Yep. You're going to see it with Tish James. I think you're going to see it with Alvin Bragg.
I wouldn't be surprised if he still went after Hillary Clinton just to energize his base. It's the one thing he's been promising, over and over, lock her up. It was the whole chant. And I think it's a very serious possibility if you look at what's going on right now.
Yeah, it's very true. So let me ask you this, because Trump reportedly gave Hamas a strict deadline to release hostages. Has to be by Sunday, 6 p.m. Trump calls it Washington time. I call it Eastern Standard Time. Now, I want to be clear to my listeners and to viewers that this podcast is being filmed and recorded before that deadline comes due. But I do want to ask you this question on this strict deadline by Trump to release the hostages to Hamas. How reckless is it for a sitting president to publicly broadcast demands to a terrorist organization, despite the fact that all of his deadlines so far, whether it was to Russia, whether it was to Hamas before, have all been ignored and laughed at?
It is one of the most reckless things that he does on a daily basis. And I'm glad that you brought up Russia. It's the perfect example of it, because what it does is it gives these individuals, and first of all, his timeline is usually bullshit. Okay. Maybe he's using the word strict this time, right? We will see what happens, but let's just use other examples where he says 5 days or 9 days or 10 days. To Putin, it gives him the green light. And what happens every time Trump says, I'm giving Putin 2 weeks, right? A bunch of Ukrainians are dead again that night and the next day, and there's more bombings. And also, Putin is testing out where he can fly in different parts of airspace. He's testing the limits. So this is one of the most fucking insane things I've ever heard, because what he's done is he's given them more time to do whatever the fuck they want to do before we find out what the fuck he's going to do.
Yeah. And I'll tell you something, because
same thing. And by the way, in Iran, right? I'm going to do X, Y, and Z probably within 30 days. Okay, guys, you got a week to get your shit out of that bunker.
Yeah. So could this kind of messaging jeopardize intelligence operations or, for example, the lives of the hostages that are still being held by Hamas?
I think it is on a daily basis. And I think it's one of the reasons why we hear, and we've seen so much reporting on different countries hesitating and withholding intelligence to share with the United States that ultimately could get in the hands of Donald Trump. I think you've got, career service members in the CIA and other places with longstanding contacts that are probably able to do work that is not making it in certain areas. But at the same time, it's constantly jeopardizing our safety in so many different ways, because we're just minimizing ourselves on a world stage day after day after day, the same way that Kash Patel minimizes the job of the FBI director day after day.
Yeah, and now take this and then put it with the government shutdown, which ultimately does what? It gives an advantage to our adversaries, where now they understand, well, how about there's a reduction of personnel in X, Y, and Z agency, or there's, nobody sort of manning the guns, so to speak.
And we're hearing it. I think we heard it today from Interior. They were advertising like all of these national landmarks are partially open. What that means is you can go, however, there's not going to be staff there. And oh, by the way, in the past, when this has happened, we had to send in search and rescue because someone got hurt. We didn't even know they were there. But again, it just puts a target on so many of these places you're talking about, not just obviously a national monument, but like certain areas where we hold very serious secrets and devices.
Yeah. On top of that, it's not only for search and rescue for U.S. citizens or tourists who get hurt while at these parks. What if hypothetically somebody sets up an incendiary? I mean, I don't want to start giving anybody. I mean, you could set it up there knowing.
You're not a conspiracy theorist here. I mean, it has been stated in the past. Let's go back to Russia, for example, that there are more operatives for Moscow in the United States than there are employees of the government in Moscow, right? It's like watching the Americans. This network is all throughout the country. And it's not just that. We heard about it after the Iran hit, right? We were wondering if any of these cells that have been around for years were going to do something. This is a huge fucking problem. I am shocked to this day that we haven't had a major incident on Metro or the subway. It's shocking to me. And it's terrifying.
You also have fewer now TSA at airports and so on. I mean, it is bound to have a repercussion. In physics, they always say for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Well, what do you think is going to happen here? When you lower your guard, our adversaries take advantage. And that in and of itself should never permit the government. Government should never be permitted to shut down. I don't care. These politicians have one specific job. Work on behalf of your constituents. And if you think that working on behalf of your constituents is to shut down the government, well, then you have no fucking business being a member of Congress. You have no business being an elected representative. Do your goddamn job. Figure it out. Now, I say this as respectfully as I possibly can, especially to my listeners who, most of whom, really truly despise the president and this administration. Every single president comes to the White House with their own agenda. Many people turn around, myself included. I didn't like all of, for example, Reagan's. I didn't like Reagan's policies. I didn't like, I didn't like Bush's policies, all of them. I didn't like Obama's policies, all of them. We didn't
mind their decorating.
Understood. I didn't like some of Trump's policies first time. I didn't like all of Biden's, and I certainly don't like Trump's in this second term. I get it. Every president comes with his own ideas. So what's the job of the Democratic Party? What's the job of our elected leaders? Figure out how to, as far as I'm concerned, water down the poison. You're not going to convince them to do what you want. Let's just get that straight in your head, right? You're not going to get them. It's almost like losing in the third quarter of a basketball game by 70 points and then asking the other side, not to stop you from scoring and then to turn the ball over every single time that, that they get the ball out. It doesn't work that way. They're coming in to win. Fine. Water down the poison so that it doesn't end up killing the rest of us. It may hurt a little bit, but ultimately water it down so that when we retake, whether it's Congress, the White House, what have you, we can turn it back into the ideas and the ideology of our party.
Let me ask you a question. Are you surprised that, given how much and how quickly this administration, Donald Trump, everyone around him, violates the law, what they're willing to do to pretend the law does not exist, and what they're forcing our military and National Guard to do, that they haven't just started to pretend that Congress doesn't exist anymore and just say, I'm fucking reopening government. I got the Treasury. I got this guy. I got control of everything. I'm actually a little surprised to some extent that Senate Republicans and Mike Johnson are even following procedures sometimes and actually going to question whether or not the clerk can do this or can't do this. To me, the fact that that piece is still even working is shocking to me.
Well, I don't think so, because he knows that he's controlling the entire legislative body. He has done exactly what he said he was going to do. And shame on anybody that didn't listen, because Lord knows, Adam, we, especially myself, I've been yelling this from the rooftops for years now. When Donald Trump says something, just take him for his word. When he said he was going to rewrite the Constitution, that he was going to strip both the legislative and the judiciary of their co-equal powers and confer it to the executive branch, what do you think he's doing right now? Exactly that. And shame on anybody that didn't listen, either didn't show up to the ballot box to vote, or, as far as I'm concerned, voted Republican. But you know what? You bring up a good point about the National Guard, which sort of, as a segue, I want to use it. What's the significance of National Guard troops still stationed in D.C. amid, these political rallies like Hegseth's military pep rally? And what does it say about our democracy?
Well, from the standpoint of what Donald Trump's doing, look no farther than Putin. Like when the military failed to shoot Yeltsin, a lesson was learned by Putin, and he combined everything. He put somebody he trusted with his life in charge of that. I think it was his former chef, wasn't it?
Yep.
And literally made sure that he was going to have a military that was going to do anything and everything he said at any time. And that's what Donald Trump is doing right now.
Yeah, he most certainly is. But you're a DC guy, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when you see these National Guard troops over, for example, at Union Station, or you see them in the Great Mall, or you see them at Lincoln Memorial, this is not areas, number one, that weren't already being patrolled by DC police. These aren't areas that aren't filled with thousands of people every single day. These are not areas that are crime ridden. Why don't you go into Southwest DC, Southeast
so
DC?
To your point, you got 4 quadrants in DC, right? You got Northwest, Northeast, Southwest, Southeast. Northwest DC, historically, almost all of it, there's not only very little crime, but if it is, it's sort of on that Northwest, Northeast border on North Capitol. I have only been in a DC twice recently in the last 2 months. I was in the Northeast quadrant. I didn't see a single member of the National Guard. The folks we're discussing right now are in areas like outside the Apple store, for instance, right? In Chinatown, in Georgetown, when they're not picking up trash or putting down soil. They are not in areas that historically have had issues. Now, even if you sent them into those areas that actually could use some extra help, it's not going to do much of anything, because as soon as they're gone, whatever the issue was and the community policing problem that exists and the crime that exists, it's going to start all over again. And what you've had in DC historically is shootings in the summer when it's warm, and domestics in the winter when it's cold and people are stuck inside and so forth. And they're understaffed at the DC Police Department. I think they're authorized by Congress to have an upwards of, I want to say 4,000 officers. And I don't think that they've hit the recruitment numbers in years. And to watch when the National Guard was in DC, and you had what we call white shirts, probably the same up in New York, right? Which are officials backing up ICE and doing like for years, I've seen these officials come and they would look and use their best judgment and figure out, a domestic is one thing. If someone says something or it's crisscross, that is an arrest you have to make. But there are other times where they really tried in DC to do real community policing and make things better. And this is just the complete opposite. Oh, and most importantly, the quadrant that we're talking about in Northwest, I don't know the exact number, it's 4752, but that's how many police agencies you have. That's how many agencies are authorized to make an arrest, write a ticket, and have jurisdiction. You've got everything. You've got the GAO police, you've got the FBI police, you've got the Mint police, the Smithsonian police. You literally have, I think, somewhere between 40 and 50 plus federal agencies that are right there along with others, right? Like Metro Transit. So there, and by the way, this is where all of these ATF, FBI, and other agents are based until they go out into the suburbs at some point in the future. You have more legal guns in this area that you were sending the National Guard to probably than anywhere else in the country, minus potentially New York, that just has a major police force.
Yeah, and they most certainly do. But the way I see it, I see that they're turning this active duty military into props for political theater. And
by the way, it doesn't look good. If you remember that military parade he had where everybody was out of shape and not walking the same. And, I think he did more damage humiliating himself, trying to compare himself to a Xi Jinping or a Putin. And maybe that's why Pete Hegseth is doing some of what he's doing right now.
Yeah, you're 100% right. And my bigger fear is that they ultimately use this active military, these active duty military personnel, in order to quell protests, which of course is against the law. That's, posse comitatus. They are using our active duty military within which to patrol and to target U.S. citizens as well.
And federal officers. We saw that with the Epstein Trump statue outside the Capitol before the shutdown. Within 36 hours of it showing up, they had gone through a very long process to get permitted by the U.S. Park Service and Park Police. And what happened? Park Police showed up in the middle of the night for Donald Trump and took it away.
Yep.
And it had 6 days left on a legal permit, and it checked every single box, including full-time security with it.
Absolutely. So let me ask you then, Chris, again, moving to just a different, because there's so much going on here. How blatant is the violation of the Hatch Act when government agencies are now posting partisan messages on official websites? You ever try launching a podcast with zero experience? Well, let me tell you, it's like being tossed into a cage match with a grizzly bear, blindfolded, wearing clown shoes. When I started Mea Culpa, I thought to myself, come on, how hard can this be? Well, script writing, logos, production schedules, ad deals, and don't even get me started on the tech setup. I felt like I was decoding the damn Matrix. If only I had Shopify when I launched this beast. Shopify is the platform behind millions of businesses across the globe, responsible for a whopping 10%, you hear me? 10% of all e-commerce in the United States. And my friends, that's not hype. That's a fact. From big names like Mattel and Gymshark to folks just getting their hustle off the ground, Shopify's got their back. You want a gorgeous online store? Shopify's got hundreds of sleek, ready-to-go templates that make you look like a design god. And AI tools? Yeah, they've got those too. Writing your product descriptions, jazzing up your images, maybe even making you sound smarter than you actually are. Not naming names or anything, right? Need a marketing squad? Shopify's built-in tools let you hit email, Instagram, TikTok, wherever your customers are scrolling or doom scrolling. And listen, Shopify handles it all. Inventory, returns, international shipping. They are the ride or die business partner that you never knew that you needed. So if you got a big idea or even a little one and you're ready to turn that dream into a reality, head over to shopify.com/Cohen. So if you want to see less carts being abandoned, it's time for you to head over to Shopify and sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/Cohen. That's Shopify, shopify.com/Cohen. One more time, that's shopify.com/Cohen. I want all of my listeners and viewers to understand, if you went on, for example, HUD's website, there is a gigantic red banner that turns around and they all use the same language, the radical left lunatics. That's how they started, which of course is Trump's slogan. They are using government websites, official government websites, within which to target their political opponents.
And two other things we know, Michael, if it couldn't get worse than that, is one, we know that they're also using email. They sent out emails to members of the VA and others. They received an email with that same language. But secondly, we heard something that was really scary on top of this, and I believe it was Natasha Korecki who reported it. But the Department of Education went in and changed the out-of-office replies from the employees that are out of the office because of the shutdown to add language about Democrats in their out-of-office replies.
I mean, this is ridiculous, which brings me to my question. If we normalize this, if we just accept this as being, it's just Trump being Trump, okay, it's a violation of the Hatch Act, but who's going to prosecute it? Do we not risk fundamentally eroding the integrity of our civil service?
For sure, forever. I mean, it's very sad, to have family members who spent 30 years in federal government in different roles see everything that they work for, some of them undone in one day. We have had incredible civil servants leave who will never come back. We lost people who literally we needed when it came to like nuclear issues, for example, that they had to go and find after firing them and beg them to come back. Same thing with health and human services. But I look, this hypothesis that is in this experiment that is still relatively new, that is the United States, is not only failing, but I don't know how it recovers from this.
Does it ever recovers, really?
I don't know.
Really
I don't know. I don't know if it can.
I don't either.
It's also, by the way, just to the start, like, I'm not trying to be a conspiracy theorist here or say something that's never going to come true. But look, I think it's also going to be the biggest test on the two-party system. This is the oldest two-party system in the world, right? In places like Ukraine and others, you have new parties that form each election and so on. This is really, really not just testing the people who come out to vote, who don't want to be described as any single party anymore, but also it's a test on the system, and we're going to see what's going to happen, because at some point there will be a breaking point throughout the country where people just can't take this anymore.
Okay, so let's talk about a breaking point here. Let's just jump that over to the Epstein files. Democrats right now have the vote as a result of the last
if we swear in Congresswoman-elect Grijalva,
right. So we have the vote to force the release immediately of the Epstein file. Nevertheless, MAGA Mike Johnson does what he does best. He dismisses the entire House. That's it. Everybody go home, refusing to swear her in, refusing to allow that 218
openly protecting pedophiles.
Amen to that. How politically charging is this? And why are they doing nothing? And I'm talking about Republicans as well, who have signed on, like a Marjorie Taylor Greene, like a Josh Hawley, who have said, we are demanding the release. And Nancy Mace. How about the fact that they should immediately call, because now they have the votes, they have 218, to remove MAGA Mike Johnson as speaker and put somebody else in?
Well, you've got a great point. So the number of votes that we have from the Republican side is also a big problem for Mike Johnson. It puts him in, you would think, one would say somewhere in between a rock and a hard place, but this should be like a layup, right? This is not a difficult decision at all. I think that this is a huge fucking problem for Donald Trump. On so many different ways, right? Because when she's sworn in, not only can they remove Mike Johnson if he's not going to bring this, but let me go back for a second. There's a civil war right now within the Republican Party, and you're watching it every day, whether it's Nick Fuentes or Candace Owens or others. And if we were actually going to play like Republicans, this is what we would do. We would come out with the video of Charlie Kirk calling for the Epstein files to be released, all of them, and we would present a bill on the floor that is the Charlie Kirk, whatever the hell you want act, that is to release the Epstein files and we got the votes, bring it to a vote and make all of those Republicans vote against Charlie Kirk and cover for Jeffrey Epstein.
Amen to that one. By the way, why don't you, again, since you know Ken Martin, why don't you tell him that this is something, let's write it up together and let's send it to every single member of Congress. Send it to every single,
I love it.
Everyone, Republican and Democrat alike.
Do it for Charlie.
Do it for Charlie. By the way, I was, like everybody else, nauseated, disgusted by a political assassination. I never liked Charlie Kirk. I don't believe what he says. I think his ideology is completely skewed, opposite of mine. But still, I respect the fact he has a First Amendment right. He built something that I myself would love to be able to build on the other side. He had a real movement, as much as I don't agree with the ideology, but to kill somebody because of that political ideology, it opens up a Pandora's box that nobody in this government, nobody in this country should want to see happen. And I was, very quick to turn around to say, this is tragic, and this is not America, nor should it be what we're all about. But can we just stay on this?
I just want to say, I agree with everything you just said. And also, it's one of those moments where there's not many in life, but you remember exactly where you were. And oddly, I found out about it 4 minutes before I was going on with Michael Popak. Wow. So that's what we were talking about the whole time, right? But it's like 9/11. There's just certain events, and it was chilling, and that should never happen to anybody. And the conversation right now we're having is, again,
look, you know better than
a lot
most
of hate
people.
And lies, but we're having an open conversation.
Look, you know better than most because I wanted your help in terms of running for Jerry Nadler's seat as a strategist. I wanted your help. My children, right after I was in my den watching television when I saw this thing unfold. And I remember my children that night turning around saying to me, that thought that you had of running for Nadler's seat, putting yourself into the crosshairs, of potential crosshairs? No fucking way, Pop.
And I think a lot of people felt that way. Exactly. We had Rudy Giuliani, tweeting about my wife going crazy with endless death threats and other things like that. It was absolutely disgusting. And it is, it's going to change. Like, it's going to affect a lot of things that are happening. For instance, Republicans never hold town halls, but guess who has? Democrats have been going into Republican districts to hold those town halls. How can you do that anymore?
You can't. Not unless you're crazy.
How can you be sure that you're safe going into these Republican districts where, most of these are controlled by Republicans, the sheriff's office and everything else? I mean, you've got to have law enforcement that truly protects things and works together. And it is made things very difficult for people to go and just have real conversations with Americans anymore.
Exactly. So look, Adam, the hour, unfortunately, on Mea Culpa goes by real quick. Final question for you. Taking everything that we talked about, taking it together, slow Democratic messaging, Comey indictment, Trump's hostage threats, militarized rallies, Hatch Act violations, the Epstein files, congressional obstruction. What should truly alarm Americans about where our government is headed, and what the hell do we need to do in order to change course?
Well, I think the totality of everything that's happening right now is what's terrifying, right? Because we're headed. It's like Russia. You're going to have grocery stores where you're going to be seeing empty shelves and you're fighting for food. Most people don't realize all of the different things that are affected by a shutdown alone, let alone having a dictator like Donald Trump. In a shutdown right now, people just happened to get their SNAP benefits, EBT, because those funds were paid out at the end of September for October. What happens if the shutdown goes over 30 days? Well, there is a little bit of a fund that they can pull from, but that's going to run out quick like we saw in 2018 and 2019. People that can take SNAP are not, if they have a license expiring, they can't get it renewed during a shutdown. So you're going to have people that won't have money to get food. You're going to have people who can't sell food because they can't accept SNAP. And that's just one little example. You're going to have premiums that go up if this bill goes through the way it is right now. There are just so many things right now that are all parallels that are just headed the wrong way. And unfortunately, it feels like a lot of people that are not part of that 38%, that are part of the percent that voted for Donald Trump ultimately, and I don't mean physical, but again, if you can't pay for healthcare, then you may have a problem there, are going to feel some type of pain in order to see what is going on around them. And a large portion of those folks just never will.
Amen to that. Adam Parkhomenko, thank you for joining me here on Mea Culpa. We have a lot more to talk about, so certainly I'm going to be asking
this
you
is
to come
great,
back.
Man. Love you, brother.
Send my regards to Ali and reach out to Ken Martin. Let's get a meeting with him.
Let's do it.
Amen.